Greetings loved ones and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my cozy corner of my bedroom. I don't know why I don't film over here, honestly because I've been doing just way more vlogs than sit down videos, but if you noticed, I did not put up any videos onto my main channel here in February. I was only uploading to my Patreon just because I've been kind of like sitting with where I want to move to next with my videos. It's not like I've been hitting burnout, but more just like feeling a little bored of my vlog content and wanting to reinvigorate that in a new way. But in the meantime, just kind of like honing in on my skills and passions and then going from there to bring that passion to renewed content for you. So I did put up 2 videos to my Patreon, which are here if you want to go patreon.com/Meghan Hughes and check them out. That's what I was doing in February, apart from just a bunch of life updates that I'll probably get to in this Q&A. But speaking of Patreon, my patrons actually sent in these questions rather than me sourcing them from Instagram, because I think maybe I'll just address this as like my first question in the Q&A. But I've just been feeling not passionate about Instagram. I think a lot of us might be feeling that way right now. Just the meta of it all. But I just wanted to do a personal Q&A because I don't remember the last time that we did a personal Q&A on my main channel. It's definitely been a minute, so we are due for a life update. And one of you at the top of the year was like, Meg, I feel like everything is moving so fast in your life, and I would just love if we did like quarterly Q&As for catch-ups on like what's been going on in your neck of the woods. So maybe we could do something like that, but hey, no promises, hun. Maybe I'll aim for like 2 a year at least. Anyway, Butterfly asked, thoughts on socials? I see that you've mentioned that you haven't been liking Instagram, and I haven't either. I'd love to hear how your relationship with social media has changed, and if that's changed now that you miss Corvidia. I think this person might have meant now that you have Miss Corvidia. Rue's gonna join me for this question. Larry's on the bed hibernating, but she wants to be seen by the people. You know, she's a socialite. How do I answer this question quickly? I mean, how much time do you have? I guess just my overall thoughts on social media, yes, have changed since I've become a parent, but mostly because I feel attacked by the algorithm a lot. Like whenever I log on to any meta platform, Instagram or Facebook, I'm just going on there simply to check on some things. And when I scroll my feed, it's like, how to lose 35 pounds postpartum. And I'm like, oh no, not this again. And then if I go to my explore page on Instagram, it's just all weight loss content as well. And no matter how many times I press not interested, it just keeps feeding it and feeding it and feeding it to me. I'm not even like interacting with this content. It's not what I want to see, you know? So it feels very like sinister and gross. And then also probably a big thing that kind of goes like in tandem with that is that it doesn't make me feel good to use especially Instagram now. Not just because of like the algorithm or that content that I'm being fed or whatever, but it just makes me feel like, I don't know, doom scrolly. And I like Instagram stories because I can update you really quickly and let you know about new videos and whatever, and I'll still, you know, continue to use that platform, I feel like. And I like to see what my friends are up to as well. But now I've been making more of a point to like reach out to my friends and just check in with them via text rather than feeling like my relationship with them depends on having an Instagram interaction, you know, or replying back in the DMs. It's like, I would so much rather text. If you're my friend watching this, please just text me, okay? I really don't want to have any attachment to going through my DMs and trying to get back to people. My last thing, just to keep this kind of relatively short, is that I don't want my daughter to just like watch me scroll, you know? It's one thing if she falls asleep when she's like nursing or we're cuddling or something and I'm just like checking, or if I'm doing work specifically, but I don't like being attached to going on there and feeling as though I need to spend more time there than I already do for work. Because Finley and I talk about this all the time, but like I could use Instagram only for work, but then it's like, because my work is sharing my life, I could make so many excuses being like, oh, I'm just like studying up on trends, but I'm actually just watching Instagram reels. Or like, you know, it's just so funny how many excuses we could make about wasting time on those platforms. But I just really do feel as though they're a time suck. And right now I would say I'm at my healthiest relationship with it because I really use it very, very sparingly. And I don't feel FOMO. Like I don't feel as though I'm missing out on anything when I'm not on there, which is helpful. But I don't know, comment your relationship with social media down below, because we've been talking about this on my Patreon, because I have been feeling like, whew, that sun, honey. When I was talking about, oh, do you want I Love This stuff to come back in vlogs? People were like, yes, just put it in vlogs. Like, I'm trying not to spend more time on short form content apps like Instagram and TikTok and all those places. So we've been kind of discussing that, and a lot of people are just feeling like overwhelmed and like their attention spans are dying, and that people are kind of making a return back to long form content to heal their brain rot, if you will. Okay, I'm changing locations for the rest of the video because filming with the natural light was not going well for me. The next questions I'm going to be answering are all about the garden and my garden plans, which I didn't know how many of you would be interested in this, but it was like a very significant amount of questions were about the garden and garden planning. So it's nice to know that you guys miss that content as much as I miss making it. And needless to say, it is a huge 2025 goal now that we have the tractor to get that garden going. Right now, because I'm filming this in early March, I am studying up on our new hardiness zone, which is zone 5B. I used to be in Oregon in zone 8, so it was significantly different. The things that I could grow, the times that I was growing them were a lot earlier. Like in March in Oregon, I would be getting ready to plant directly into the ground, but now I'm probably not going to be doing that until like April or early May for some of my plants. So here in Vermont, it's just a lot shorter and later of a season for gardening, and I'm just trying to like read up. I have 2 books. Do you want to see them? I checked them out from the library. I've been studying up with these 2 books, the Vermont Gardener's Companion, as well as the Resilient Farm and Homestead. And these books have been so helpful in just like the pre-spring thaw mode, which is, I would say like gardening is 50%, if not more, planning for like what you're gonna do, especially if you're doing it in a sustainable way. So like this book, The Resilient Homestead, has been so helpful for just talking about like compost and your energy cycling and your land analysis, which I've never gardened here before. And it's going to take a lot of trial and error to figure out like what, not only what plants to grow and what thrives here, but like where exactly plants will thrive and with what direction the sunlight is hitting. And also a huge thing that we have to do this year is put in outdoor water systems. We have to dig and put in hoses. So I just feel like maybe this year, I don't know how much we're going to be like full on growing and like returning back to huge harvests. I had last year a tiny little like kitchen garden basically of just like herbs that my mom helped me plant when she came before I had Corvidia, so like early May. Some of our biggest things that we're going to need to figure out ahead of time are our water management, because we were in a drought last fall and now we have like multiple feet of snow on the ground. So obviously it's like the precipitation is there right now, but we're going to need to figure a lot of things out. I don't know if this is like boring to talk about. Some people have been reminding me that like it's nice to plan together. I could do like a study with me moment in a vlog or show you my actual garden plans, which, do you guys want to see that? I'll insert a little clip of like what I'm thinking for the actual garden, and I'll show you the area that we're going to be gardening in. But this is what I'm thinking right now. Number 1, raised beds, because our soil it just needs to be amended so much here that I don't really want to go through the whole effort of like figuring out how bad the topsoil is. I'm just gonna probably bring new soil and compost in, and we do have a compost tumbler now that we can like use for all of that. And we'll probably scoop out some of the soil and the old hay and stuff from the old pig pen and use that. We used to do that in Oregon. I think that we're going to make our raised beds. I do love the idea of using like a stock tank raised bed system, but stock tanks, unless you find them secondhand, are very expensive. So I think we're gonna use some of the old roofing material. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a baby break, but I'm wondering where the heck I left off. I know that I was talking about the garden and talking about raised beds and how I like the idea of stock tanks and using recycled materials or reused materials instead of buying stock tanks new or looking for them on Facebook Marketplace, I could do that too, but they're probably in high demand around these parts. You know, so many farmers and gardeners and homesteaders around. Anyway, that's the rough plan. And then also, I don't know if this is gonna be happening this year because I still have to research long-term plants. Well, not just plants, but like trees, bushes, and shrubs. And also our property has basically no landscaping. So that's another thing too that we'll probably get to when the outside of the house just looks more attractive. When we reside the house, when we replace our windows. I mean, now we're just getting into something completely different, but I hope that I answered your gardening questions. I'm very excited to get back to just like growing more of my own herbs. I did it on a smaller scale last year, I said, with my kitchen garden, but just having a bigger space to do that and reinvigorating my love again for herbalism and just like making homemade products. Hello? Hi, Larry. I guess just the goal is really to have garden and orchard and be able to just like live off of the land a little bit more and then source everything else, not produce wise, from local farms and stuff like that for like dairy and meat and all that kind of good stuff. And then kind of going along with that question, Kayla asked, what's your dream vision for your land aside from the house, like inside? What kinds of amenities would you love to have on your property? Examples, sauna, greenhouse, barn. I don't fucking know anything. The world's your oyster, right? So I guess if we're talking like we had no budget and could do all of the wildest things in the world to this property, I would definitely get solar because we are like southern facing on a main side of the house. I would get snow stopper bars so that the snow stops falling in like frequented areas like the outside of our garage where we drive all the time. We just have to like constantly shovel that area. I definitely would do a barn. Right now we have a big enough workshop that we can hold pretty much all of our tools in the basement, but like if we got more animals down the line or something like that and needed an actual barn for them, I know where I would put that. What else? This is crazy. I mean, definitely a sauna. That would be iconic and very fun. We already planned to do this once we do more outdoor work, but having a deck would be really great. And then I already know where I want to put the deck. So then underneath that, having like a little porch swing and like a swing set so we could watch the kids. And I mean, I feel like if we're talking about wildest dreams, I'm like, how far should I go? But that's pretty much it. Oh, and then also a maintained trail system. So just having graveled paths that wouldn't get like washed away. I mean, they would just require a lot of maintenance. So we need to do a lot of like tree work and stuff back on our acreage. And I'm just not ready for that right now. We're just focusing indoors. But if we're talking crazy plans, I mean, I talked about this it was almost a year ago when I filmed my 27 lessons I learned at 27 video. I was walking around talking about land plans. And that video probably encompasses a lot of that as well. I feel like I talked about this for so long, so I'm gonna go off to another question, which is from Daff. And they asked, would love to know your thoughts and feelings on quitting smoking weed and how that change has affected you mentally, physically, emotionally, if you noticed increased motivation, natural dopamine, or if you ever plan on revisiting Mary Jane again. So yeah, I guess I really haven't talked about this very much in depth. I have not been a consistent weed smoker since 2022. Short summary, I got my wisdom teeth out in early 2022 before I got married. I had a lot of complications. I basically had like a hole going from one of my top wisdom teeth through my sinus. So that really freaked me out for just like, you know, the French inhale and stuff. It was like hard to even drink water without it coming out of my nose. I had a perforated sinus. You're not supposed to smoke weed like when you are getting your wisdom teeth out for lots of various reasons that I won't get into, but I had stopped for that. And then I basically was like, oh, I wonder if I could go 6 months without weed. And then I did. And then I was like, I did 6 months. That means I could do another 6 and then I would be a year weed free. And then I did that. And then I smoked again on 4/20 of 2023. And then I started just using it so lightly again, like at a bonfire with friends. But I really just had more of a relationship with CBD, if anything. And the last time that I ever smoked CBD was right before I got pregnant. So like August of 2023, living here. And I did like a Vermont stoop sesh on our front porch, and that was the last time. And now it is March of 2025. And I would say overall, it has shockingly not affected me. I feel like I just tapered down so much for so many years. Like, I was a very frequent smoker really when I lived in LA and early years of living in Oregon. And then kind of, I mean, we moved out of Oregon in 2022. So around that time was when I basically just like broke up with it, you know? And I feel like it wasn't that hard of a transition for me, mainly because I was using CBD instead for a while. But I mean, I guess now we're talking about the relationship between CBD or THC, and that's a whole other thing. I mean, they're both weed, right? But one just affects you differently. Socially, it has really not affected me. Most of my friends just do it socially at like parties or gatherings or whatever, and I don't really feel affected by that. Like, I don't feel like I'm missing out or have FOMO. It's been so long since I was like really frequently using it and then making that cut. So I don't really know about the dopamine question that you asked, like if I've had increased dopamine, but I mean, I feel content in life without it, and I don't feel much of a draw. I mean, I even said to my friends a couple weekends ago while they were smoking, I was like, hey, do y'all think I'll ever smoke weed ever again? Because I'm gonna be like nursing or pregnant for like X amount of years because we want to have more children. So that's really now what I feel. I just personally don't want to nurse and breastfeed. I know that some people do that, but for me, it's just like, I haven't seen the cold hard evidence that that would be okay, because breast milk is fatty and THC is fat soluble. It just like doesn't make sense in my brain. Not judging you if that's like your cup of tea, but it's just, yeah, not for me at this phase of life. So that's how I'm feeling with it right now. I really feel far removed, I guess, from it at this point, which feels like lame to say, but I don't feel lame overall. You know, I'm just like, meh, that was fun while it lasted. Mary Jane did me well for so long. And Finley, when our friends were over and I asked that question, was joking like, yeah, you'll probably just be like one of those old ladies where like, you know, once the kids are grown up and out of the house, you'll just be like token up a storm or something. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll revisit it like, you know, in my elder years. I don't know, man, but right now it's just feeling like meh. Now that we've brought up the question of nursing, I want to say somebody asked me about my breastfeeding journey, and I feel like there's so much to say on that topic that if it interests you, I will make an entire breastfeeding video. Just let me know. I'm kind of gauging interest. I'm going to answer now a couple of questions about motherhood just because I got a handful of them. Andy said, personally, I find the thought of motherhood scary, in parentheses, for many reasons. One being potentially losing my sense of self / identity / individuality and solely becoming just mom. Not saying that being a mom is a bad identity or less than at all. Are there any things that you do, have read, etc., that have kept that pre-mom part of you nourished? I hope that makes sense and I was able to articulate my question in a constructive way. You were. And I totally understand what you're getting at and completely understand the fear around that. So I feel as though I've kind of been talking about this, right? In the beginning of this year, talking about like, you know, prioritizing myself in motherhood, and they call it getting your pink back because flamingos lose the pink in their feathers through their child rearing years and then they gain it back after some time. And so people call this journey getting your pink back, where you feel a renewed sense of motivation and a return to yourself outside of, yeah, I guess just being mom. I will say I really do enjoy just being mom, and this person was very clear, like they're not, you know, trying to offend by saying that, or not saying that that's like a less than sort of role or identity. But I will say the time management of prioritizing yourself in motherhood and just parenthood as a whole is tough. This is such a personal question and such a unique journey to each person. I know some people, you know, I'm part of a parent group, and I know some people in group who have sort of resentment to the fact that their life is so different now, or at least they did very early postpartum. And I think that that is way more common than you think. And while I didn't necessarily feel this way, I don't want to invalidate that experience, but I feel like for myself, which I can only speak for my own experience, I maybe didn't experience that as much because for my whole life, basically since age 9, I was working with children and wanting to have a big family and always like working towards that goal of motherhood. And while nobody could have like told me about all the ins and outs of postpartum and what I would expect. And childcare and working in that is so different than having a child of your own, right? And feeling those feelings for them than you would for another person's child. But I don't know, if I'm like thinking about it analytically, maybe that helped me in some ways feel more prepared for what early motherhood would bring on in that way. But I didn't really feel those resentful feelings. But I totally understand that people do. It's kind of cliche, but people just call this a season of life, right? And that range of months is so variable for so many people of like how long it takes you to feel more normal again. And it's like, what is normal? You know, now we're getting a pretty meta about it all. But for myself now, I am 9 months postpartum and I feel as though I'm just now getting my pink back, I guess, if I were to use that funny phrase. Now that my baby is like crawling and standing and a little bit more mobile, it's feeling as though I could do a little bit more because she in herself is feeling more independent. And I've been feeling much more of a call right now to get involved in my community and take time for myself and get that facial and get that massage and go to get my nails done for 3 freaking hours or whatever, however long it takes, you know? And before, it's not like I was telling myself, you can't do that, you can't do that, but it felt as though the time was taken up for my baby, you know, and that was okay for the time that it was. This is a very, very long answer to this question. You basically asked, are there things that I do and have read that have kept the pre-mom part of me nourished? And I would say right now, those things are returning to my herbalism practice, teaching Zumbini, which is a new thing in my life, having more time for just like reading and listening to audiobooks and that hobby of mine, and studying and planning for the garden and feeling as though I have more time for that as well. Those are kind of my main 4, I guess, and like getting more involved, yeah, in my community and meeting neighbors and stuff. So those things have kept the pre-mom part of me nourished, but also I am changed as a person in so many ways because of my daughter, and all of them, for the most part, in my experience, have been positive changes. There are some things which I'll talk about in this video that I was not expecting, that I wouldn't say are like negative changes, but were more unexpected changes. So let's talk about those now. Crystal asked, what has surprised you the most about motherhood, and or what was the most unexpected? I remember being shocked at how much time it took to get out of the door and into the car. And then Abigail asked, what has been your biggest challenges surrounding becoming a mom? Is it what you expected? Thanks for sharing your life. So yes, I would say it is what I expected. My biggest challenges have been my relationship to my body. I think that's a huge thing for a lot of people postpartum. And also my relationship to intimacy and my relationship to my pets. Oh my God. Nobody told me that because I'm spending so much time cuddling my daughter that I would have less time cuddling my animals who were my original babies, you know? It kind of makes me like teary-eyed to think about. And thank God I have Finley, who is just like such a dog man, you know? And he, regardless of like what stance I'm in, like if I'm nursing and my legs are like kind of parted, he'll be like, Larry would like to be invited into your lap. And I'm like, okay, yeah, Larry, come on in. And like my thought wouldn't initially be to be like, Larry, get in these legs, buddy, you know, get comfortable. But he loves that time. And I love that Finley like advocates for the pets, which sounds so funny, but like he does. Or like if I'm going out to run errands or something and the weather is nice and the dogs won't be freezing in the car, Finley will be like, oh, maybe you could like stop by the dog store and Larry would love to come on like a mommy date with you, you know? And just having that time for my first baby, my son, is so important, especially now that my sister's dog Squirtle has passed away, which was it was a tough pill to swallow, okay? Squirtle was the first dog that Lindsay and I got when we moved to LA, or I moved to LA and she was already there for school. And I won't get too much into that, but like that perspective, I think it's just a lot harder for me now to think about like not giving my dogs the time that they need, you know? And it's like, obviously I'm pouring so much into this little being, but nobody told me, and I don't know if like people should warn each other about that, but just like if you are a major dog person or a cat person or whatever, I mean, it's a tough transition to be like, oh wow, I have less time. And also the dogs, they have their own unique relationship to the baby. I mean, I really think that my dogs thought that she would never be mobile. So now that she's crawling, they're like, what the heck, this thing is moving. And obviously we're being very, very mindful about like gentle petting and separating them and only allowing them to, you know, interact in a supervised way, because it's not fair to your animals to like leave them with the baby unsupervised. It's not fair to your child either. And that's just been like a unique part of motherhood that I think nobody really talks about. And then I would say the biggest change within me is related to this question that Jada asked, which is, how has your relationship with intimacy changed since becoming a mother? Which honestly, similar to the breastfeeding topic, I think that, I mean, even more than the breastfeeding topic, this needs to be its own video here on my channel. Intimacy after having a child. It is so different. And I mean, I knew it would be. And through reflecting on this for the past 9 months, I have realized how much of my identity I tied up in my like drive and my intimacy and all of that kind of stuff. So when that drive was taken away early postpartum, it was actually very interesting, because very, very early on postpartum, and I think I talked about this possibly in my 3rd trimester in postpartum, like early postpartum recap video, which I'll link on the screen. But I was immediately, probably 2 weeks postpartum, extremely horny. And then as the weeks and months went on and my estrogen was just like lower and lower because of breastfeeding and all of those hormonal drops, my drive was just taken away so much more. And it was like a mourning. And it sounds ridiculous to say that, but it was like a physical mourning. Like I texted my midwives multiple times being like, am I broken? Is this ever going to come back? There are so many other things in a marriage and in a relationship that feed me and feed our relationship, and like we're good, you know? But I don't think that anybody could have prepared me for that sort of shift. It was just like, wow, I really didn't realize how much of my identity I tied up in being just like a horned up gal, you know? And then when I wasn't anymore, I was like, hello? Is this thing on? Literally like so confused. And in my parent group, we had a speaker come and talk about like topical estrogen creams and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, this really deserves its own video. There's just so much more I have left to say about like all the intricacies of that, right? But in summary, I would say now, 9 months postpartum, now that I've waited the length of a pregnancy since having my baby, I do feel more normal in some ways in that arena, you know, feeling a little more hormonally normal. My drive, my desire, stuff like that is definitely starting to come back, but it is in no way like a huge priority as it used to be for me, for many reasons. I mean, my midwives kept saying like, Megan, this is so normal. Your body is saying, hey, let's not make another one right now. So let's answer those questions now, because I got a couple of those. Nicolette said, I know Corvidia is literally less than a year old, so forgive me for asking, but are you guys thinking about more kiddos? If so, what age difference do you have in mind? And then somebody else asked, do you plan to wait a few years for another baby or sooner? So before I had her, I would say to Finley, she will be in me for 9 months, out of me for 9 months, and then we can talk about it. And even before we reached this 9-month mark, I was like, hey, yeah, so I just want to check in on that. I am not ready physically for that, mainly because of the postpartum back pain, which is related to your pelvic floor. So I'm considering right now, not only just like doing more exercises to like restore my pelvic floor and abdomen strength and all that kind of stuff, but I am considering going to pelvic floor therapy just in prep for that. But I don't feel physically ready in that way to bear the load of another child right now. We are roughly aiming to be those crazy nutsos who have 2 under 2, if we are lucky enough to have that, you know? But I'm not like rushing right now, 9 months postpartum, to get pregnant again. I think maybe we'll just reassess again in a couple of months and see how I'm feeling. But I would say right now, in early March, I could honestly say I am not yet ready. Also because I'm feeling just like comfy in my clothes again, and just like that took a long time to get there, you know? And so to think about just like getting pregnant again and then having that whole thing start all over again. I'm like, yeah, I don't know about all that. I very much so want another child and want to go about that whole process again later this year. But in a couple more months, we will reassess. So that's how we're feeling now about baby number 2. On a somewhat related note, Adriana asked, what do you think or imagine will be the best part about raising your kids in Vermont? Where do I begin? I don't know. I mean, I would say number 1, just like the love of nature that most children here have, just like being raised in the woods, basically. There's so many chill kids that I've met here. And also I love how many unique names are in Vermont. Just to name a few that I've heard over the past few months. Alder, ash, cedar. Are you sensing a theme? They're all named after trees or flowers. I've met a couple marigolds and magnolias. Beautiful, beautiful names. So yeah, I love that. I love that Corvidia having the name that she does will be amongst many unique names. I love that there is such a drive for education here and doing it how you want. There's a lot of options. We have great schools in Vermont, but we also have a lot of people who would prefer to homeschool, and then there is community there as well. So like with homeschooling groups and whatnot. So we've been talking to our neighbors about the people who have basically experienced both and like what they prefer. So I think just like the freedom to have those options is really great because there are so many resources here in that way. Vermont's motto is freedom and unity. So I feel those themes very much in raising children here, you know? I feel a huge sense of community within my parent group, and just like becoming a parent has really thrust me into community in a way that I could have never expected. I do have some non-parent friends as well, but the ones that I'm seeing the most, just because I have a baby, are my parent friends. Just because babies, they love doing activities, you know? The social calendar, it's really a lot. And that kind of goes in tune with that person's question about like losing themselves. I want to say this attached onto that. I set aside like the first half of my week for like baby world, baby activities. And then the second half of my week, and especially the weekend, is just like whatever we want to do. Because it's easy to just like be scheduling your life around your child. And while that's great in some ways, I also want to have the freedom to not do that. Gosh, this video is getting freaking long. I'm gonna round it off here, I think, because I'm just answering so many questions so in depth. Megan's yapping again. Who expected that? Nobody. Victoria asked, is Vermont what you expected? Pros and cons of living there. Oh, what a big question. Wow. Okay. Pros of living here, kind of what I just said. Great place for families, lots of fun activities in that arena. A lot of people are just like driven towards, I'd say, the granola lifestyle. You know what I mean? Hiking, biking, all the outdoor activities. Obviously we get a ton of snow in normal years. Last year was like a fluke year, so I feel like we are just now experiencing our first Vermont winter. But you know, snowshoeing and skiing and snowboarding and all that kind of stuff. Snowmobiles are very prevalent around here, which is really fun. So yeah, I guess just like the love of nature. Another huge con is the abundance of great farmers and in turn, great food. So just like the resources are really there for, you know, different CSA programs if you want to join those, or like joining local co-ops. And I would say that access is like regardless of where you fall on the financial scale. Like there's so many great programs around, and free pantries and, you know, collectives and different collaboratives that are like providing great food for the community. And I just love seeing that and being a part of it in whatever way I can. Have I been saying pro or con this whole time? I feel like I've been saying huge con, but I've been meaning huge pro. Shit. I'd say another huge pro of living here is that a lot of people just like don't give up what you think about them, which is amazing. Vermont is very, very weird. And I feel like similar to Portland's like keep Portland weird slogan, Vermont has a lot of that as well. We have a lot of artistes. We have a lot of quirky folks. In my town, we have a person who like rides a unicycle around and like wears different funky masks, and people who walk around with like weird pets on their shoulder and just like stuff where you're like, how huh, only in Vermont, you know? So I love that quirkiness. I love that we have a circus school in town that's world renowned. So people go there to train to become like Cirque du Soleil professionals and stuff like that. So there's a lot of the quirk and the arts and all that kind of stuff, which is very fun because there's always a lot to do. People love music and crafting, and anytime I go out wearing some kind of like knitted material, people will be like, oh, you're so talented. I love what you made. And I'm like, I don't knit or crochet, you know, like this is either from a friend or a subscriber or something like that. But I love that the first assumption is that I made it. I feel like I could go on and on. I love Vermont. I love living here. I'm gonna change my battery and then I'm gonna get into the cons. Okay, I'm gonna try to cover the cons without getting too much into politics because it's not everybody's favorite topic to hear about in videos, and I totally get that. But I would say number one con is that this is the most expensive state I have ever lived in. But I have been told by locals that Vermont, in comparison to other northeastern states, is actually cheap. You know, compared to like New York or Connecticut or Massachusetts, it's actually cheaper. But the cost of healthcare, taxes, housing, incredibly, incredibly high. And maybe I'm just realizing it now more so because when I lived in Oregon, I wasn't paying, you know, taxes on my house because I was renting. And I also wasn't 26 yet, so I wasn't paying for my own healthcare. But that cost is huge if you're not getting your healthcare through your employer. And I mean, hey, I could sit here all day and talk about the housing crisis with you, but I'd say my main observation is that because Vermont is so small, there is a lack of housing options. The options that are there are not affordable because of the lack. So people upcharge. And then because of the taxes that like landlords and stuff need to pay, then they raise their rent and it's not sustainable because of the income that people are making. And this is like a huge government issue that is being voted on every ballot, you know? But also you have the issue of people coming here and like buying up a bunch of the properties for second homes. So recently Vermont introduced a tax on second homes. So people, if you have like a ski house or something like that, you're paying more taxes on that because the people who actually want to live here are getting less housing as a result of you wanting another property. And also when you have a lack of housing, you have a houselessness crisis, which we are in as well, especially in Brattleboro. And because Vermont is so rural and people want to keep it so rural, there isn't a lot of development here where people aren't coming in and being like, hey, maybe we'll just build this big development and everybody can move there and we'll make it, you know, affordable and all of this kind of stuff. It's very, very tough to get people to agree on that because they want to keep the ruralness of Vermont, in my understanding of the issue. Obviously, chime in down below, especially if you're a native Vermonter. But that seems to be a huge point of contention, is like people want to be doing the right thing and helping people out who are going through times of struggle. But then they're also like, oh, but then we'll have to build more and then we'll have to deal with the construction and the raised taxes and, you know, the loss of the land mass, or I don't know, whatever, stuff like that. And the issue is way too big for me to sit here and mouth off for an entire video, but that is a huge con of living here, is like people are always up in arms about the town's a changing and, you know, out-of-towners are raising the rent and the prices, which like is true to a certain extent, you know what I mean? But then also Vermont really wants young people to move here because it's an older population. I forget where we fall on the list of like the oldest population of states, but we're pretty up there. And we're also not very diverse, so that's a con as well. I mean, there is more diversity, and I have said this before, like there's more diversity in my personal bubble and experience than when I was living in Oregon. I was just living in very, I'll call it yeehaw rural territory, but here it's a little bit less yeehaw and it's more like, yeah, granola folks. But to answer this person's main question, they basically just asked, is Vermont what you thought? And yes, I would say it is what I thought, but it is more expensive than I thought it would be. I knew, because we were shopping for a house in a housing crisis, that it would be extremely difficult to find housing, because it was. We searched for over a year and a half. But when we found this house, we were like, okay, fixer-upper life, this is just what we've got. A lot of my friends who are homeowners around here, they've either built their property from the ground up, or they have had to buy a fixer-upper to be able to afford being a homeowner, which now we're just getting into that whole topic of, is our generation ever going to be able to build equity in that way and be homeowners, which I feel as though could be an entire other video as well. But I'd say that's like the main cons. And I don't know actually if this is a pro or a con. I feel like you could go either way. But I will say just something that I've noticed is Vermont is the #1 place that I've ever felt such a sense of the people who are from here are from here. There's a very big sense of pride in being a native Vermonter. And I always laugh because it's like, how native do you want to go back? Like, are we talking Abenaki tribe native, you know, like actual natives of Vermont? But people will be like, I'm 8th generation Vermonter. What's up? Not when you first get to know them, but like they'll mention it in passing as a symbol of pride because it is. Because there are so many people from Connecticut here, and there are so many people from New York who move here, and people whose kids go to UVM, and then, you know, their parents will be like, oh, we're gonna come up and see little Bobby at college, and we're gonna go skiing, and we'll buy a house in Stowe. And then you have the snowbirds who live up here, and then they also have a house in Florida. And you have the older people who are getting too old to want to hold on to that, like, I'm a burly Vermonter who's gonna stay here throughout all of the winters. They're like, I've reached a point where I just want to retire in peace, and they go south for winter. There's a lot of various things like that here. And I personally have not felt any of the like, oh, you're from Georgia and you moved here? Like when people ask me, oh, where are you from? And I say, oh, I'm originally from Georgia. I always say, but I've also lived in California and Oregon and Virginia for small periods of time. And I chose Vermont for so many reasons, which I feel like I've highlighted in this video. But it's a fantastic place to live and I really, really love it. But I will say that the population is old. They are trying to change that. They're trying to be like, more youngins, move here and work remote. But I think it's easy to say stuff like that and tough to actually put into practice the reality that if you want young people to move here, you have to make it attainable in paying them a living wage, having options for housing and affordable healthcare and all of these kinds of things that we could just gab about forever and ever, hun. I think I said that that was going to be my last question, but I do actually want to end off on this note. A couple of people asked just about house renovations, what we're most excited for, where we're currently at, and all that kind of good stuff. So also a reason for not vlogging recently, like in February, is just because the vlogs serve as a great place for me to show little tiny fixes in house renovations and just like the upkeep of the home. But right now we are completely focused and honed in on finishing the second bathroom because it's just had so much to it. And we are projected to finish that in the next couple of months, and we're getting our finishing touches in and ordered the vanity and got the tub in and all that kind of good stuff, and we have the lighting all in. But because that area, which you guys will see in the bathroom renovation video whenever that goes up later this year, we had to bring electricity there, we had to bring plumbing there. We're tiling the floor and putting in wainscoting and wallpaper and having a double vanity and having a linen closet and all these kinds of things. So I'm kind of giving you a little spoiler alert, but it's tough for me to find the balance of like talking about things when they're happening and then like when it's going to be in your hands to like watch that process. Does that make sense? Like I am filming these sole renovation videos on like, you know, the bedroom or like the bathroom, like these one room dedications, which we basically dedicate an entire calendar year to, is kind of like what we're going off of now because Finley is doing it all by himself. So there's just a lot that goes into it, hun. And then also on top of just that one project, then you have like, oh, the dishwasher's been having some kind of a mishap and, you know, we got a leaky faucet here or a pipe burst in the wall, or, oh, we need to redo the entire outside swales when it comes to water retention. You know, all these things, it's like there will always be other things to focus on. So that's why we give ourselves like calendar year to finish that one project. And that's just what feels good to us right now. But I'd say that's like the current updates. But for future updates after this, we're kind of in a space right now where we're trying to decide if, because Finley is, you know, working on this bathroom, if he just wants to also work on this bathroom afterwards because it will all be fresh in his mind. Like all the knowledge about the plumbing and electrical and all that kind of stuff that goes into making a bathroom. So we're kind of talking about that, if we want to do this next or if we want to go in a line downstairs. So the bathroom is like in the wing in this little corner, and then the next room over is like our office kind of right now. It's more like Finley's space really, and then our storage room and our living room. So we're debating right now if we want to do the office next or if we want to do another bathroom, because a main issue is that when we do this bathroom, we're also going to rebuild our staircase that comes up here. So we will have to move out of this bedroom for a period of time. So there's just a lot of stuff where it's like, damn, I couldn't tell you what we're gonna do next, but we'll figure it out. We're just taking things one day at a time. Take it one step at a time. There's no need to rush. I felt a rush for the bedroom because I was very pregnant, so I wanted to get off of sleeping in the wing, but I don't feel as much of a rush towards other projects because I'm like, they'll just happen when they happen, and that's life, baby. And my friends and I joke around about this when we're working on our houses, but just like, renovations should be called delay-ovations because they're always getting delayed. I have friends who are like, yeah, we started building this deck, but then, you know, now it's winter and we don't really want to work on the deck. So we're gonna focus on the kitchen, but I still want to do that deck. You know, it's just like the whole schedule of renovations really gets moved around. Anyway, this has been like the longest video ever. I clearly had a lot to update you on. Thank you to my patrons for sending in questions. I was just not really feeling like getting them from Instagram. Like I said at the top of this video, I'm just feeling like meh about that platform. Meh. I like checking in there every now and again just to share what I've been up to and see what pals are doing. But otherwise, I'm trying to just like be present and in my community and helping to make small changes wherever possible because it makes me feel productive. It makes me feel less like the world is going crazy, hun. So I will leave you on that. I need to go and eat lunch. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a thumbs up for me and leave me a comment down below. I always love hearing from you. And when I'm not on here, I am on Patreon. All right, love ya. Talk to you in my next one. Stay smiling. Bye, y'all.